Oh, hey, I'm glad you're here. Did you ever notice when you were a kid that different houses had different rules? Like you'd go over to Stacy's house and it was a no shoes indoors house and you'd forget to wear matching socks. Or Bruce's dad smelled weird and would let you jump off the top of the stairs onto all the pillows in the house. Or Betty's mom would let you have cookies for dinner while she cried in the backyard. Often. Well, mom and pop video stores were very much the same way. In one shop, you'd bring the actual box up to the cashier in order to rent. And if you didn't see the movie on the shelf, then it was checked out. No, just one of the guys for you. Unless you know the pro move. You nicely, and that is key, nicely ask if they have a copy in the returns. A copy nobody knows is there because it hasn't been checked in. You ask nice because you can't see in the returns box, and if you're rude, why would they help you get your hands on the 1985 gender-swapping teen comedy? They won't. It's just a casual fake look, and then they just turn to you and say, well, it's all Benji the Hunted down here, and you're out of luck. In other shops, you'd find the actual movie in a clear plastic box behind the VHS box. This always seemed insane and kind of cruel, because sometimes you'd see that clear plastic box and think, yes, I am watching Cruel tonight. Only to get there, and some kid was going to get to see Davy Crockett and the River Pirates, but then Uncle Bruce saw that Kroll was in and ditched the box behind it. Smelly old Bruce. Another option was a small circular hanging tag with a number on it, and that tag would normally reference their storage system, a number like 4278. So no tag, no movie. And yes, Bruce would ruin that system for everyone as well. A simple bait and switch. My dad's system in his video store was poker chips. He'd write the number on the poker chips and Velcro it on the shelf below the VHS box. But all these systems share the same problem. They're not the same system. So you'd have people come up carrying up the box in my dad's store saying, here's the box, I want to rent the movie. And you're like, well, that doesn't mean it's in. And then you'd have to return the box to the shelf because the customer would just leave it there. Or they'd pull a Bruce. And I can't tell you how many times I'd take the chip, find the movie in our storage system, and then say, okay, Darby O'Gill and the Little People. Only to see a look of disgust as the person would say, Porky's. I wanted Porky's. Then you have to go around the counter and go on the Porky's crusade because the internet doesn't exist, and this guy, gosh darn it, he's going to see some boobs, but he's not going to buy porn. He's civilized. Basically, what I'm getting at is that people are always up to something. No matter it being like raising an entire flock of crocodiles in hopes they eat your Aunt Judy, sorry Judy, or just not putting things back where they belong. What we need is a way to get the truth. Which brings us to today's episode. The film is Deceiver, the guest a polygraph technician, and this is VHS. Hello, welcome to VHS. I'm your host, Dirk Marshall, and I'm joined in the studio by Erin Parker, a polygraph examiner.
Hey, buddy.
Thank you for being here.
No problem.
Now, you have no public electronic footprint, so anyone listening that has questions or follow-up comments or inquiries for Erin Parker can email them to the website, VH-US website. Website is how I end it. VH-US.com is the website, and I will reach out to you for any kind of follow-up.
Okay.
The reason that I'm joined by Erin today in the studio is because we were brought together by the film Deceiver from 1997. Was this a first-time watch for you?
Oh, it was indeed.
Okay, great. And have you seen many portrayals of polygraph examiners in cinema?
No, as a matter of fact, I think the only one that gets referenced is the Meet the Fockers one.
Oh, right.
Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of one of the main ones I think I've ever seen.
I haven't seen it, but I have seen clips of...
Yeah, that's about how it's been.
I believe it's Ben Stiller is hooked up to the machine.
Yes.
And Bobby De Niro, as I call him, is asking him questions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why.
I think maybe about casseroles and stuff. I'm not 100%.
Okay,
do you like my wife's cooking?
I'm in then. If it's mostly casserole polygraph.
If it's casserole related.
How often as a polygraph examiner do you reference casseroles?
I would say not at all.
Not at all. Okay. Okay.
I wish more, though, actually. I would appreciate that.
The premise of the podcast isn't truth or factual or not, or good or bad in film. So it's really neither here nor there. But I would like to hear more casserole references in Polygraph.
Me too.
If you could push that agenda for when you have seminars and things, I'd appreciate that.
So could we get some more casserole input, please?
I mean, it's a hot dish in some places.
How do we feel on mushroom soup combinations?
Anybody?
Anyone?
You just put it all in there and you bake it. Anybody?
Anyone?
Okay. At the time of this recording, Deceiver is available only on DVD, which is wild considering the cast alone. The synopsis, I would say right now, if it was posted on IMDb, but it's not, which is equally crazy. So I instead will read from the back of my DVD case of 1997's Deceiver. James Wayland is not a typical murder suspect. He's fabulously wealthy, a Princeton graduate, and has a genius-level IQ. But detectives Braxton and Kennesaw sense that there's more than meets the eye when they interrogate him for the brutal killing of a beautiful call girl. As their search for the truth takes a suddenly dangerous turn, and boy is it, Braxton and Kennesaw realize that Wayland is a master manipulator, cleverly using their darkest secrets against them in a lethal winner-take-all game that ignites a powder keg of deadly motives and shocking revelations.
Such a powder keg.
Wow, that is a lot longer
Yeah.
than probably necessary.
Yeah. And it did not mention, I don't think, that the said call girl was, in fact, a young Renee Zellweger.
Right. It's very true. And she is wildly young.
She was. I wonder how old she was in that. Do you know?
38. She's
That's a terrible guess.
I'm bad with names, faces, and ages. So to put this film in context, let's talk a little bit about the players involved. The director is Jonas and Joshua Pate. They also wrote this. Okay. Joshua only directed this film and then TV episodes for like Friday Night Lights. Jonas directed The Grave in '96, in which Craig Schaefer and Gabriel Anwar escape prison to search for a deadly millionaire's treasure. So these guys don't like rich people. No. They're just killing them and they're evil. They don't like greed. These guys, not fans. Mm-mm. I also reached out for a comment and did not receive.
What?
I don't know.
Did they think you were wealthy?
Probably. I did sign a Big Daddy McDollar sign. So that's just my regular sign off. When you
signed Marshall, you put dollar signs through the S's.
Yes.
That was the giveaway, man.
Know.
You should not have done that.
My bad. But Jonas went on then to direct episodes for TV again, Aquarius, Friday Night Lights, and one for Battlestar Galactica, which you were a fan of.
I love Battlestar Galactica.
So I don't know which episode it was or if it bears any resemblance to this film.
I think it's the one where they're murdering all the rich people.
Yes. And there's
that was a really good episode.
There's one polygraph examiner.
No mention of casserole.
And this is where things kind of change for Deceiver, because the cinematographer is Bill Butler. And he's a beast. So here are some of the credits for Bill. There's 84, so I'm just naming a few. I'm not doing all 84. But he did Jaws in 1975, Demon Seed in 77, Damien Omen 2 in 78, Grease in 1978.
Wow.
The cinematographer for Deceiver did Grease and Jaws, Rocky 2 in 1979, Stripes in 81, Rocky 3 in 84, Rocky 4 in 85, Rocky 5 in 86. No, I'm just kidding. Biloxi Blues in 88. Child's Play in 88.
Whoa.
Hot Shots in 91. And I like to end on this one. Beethoven 2nd, 1993. But he continued to work.
Well, now you can answer this question for me, Dirk.
I have two more. Anaconda in 97.
Oh, no.
And Deceiver in 97.
As in with Ice Cube?
Yeah.
No.
Cinematographer.
Now tell me, this is my question, is what all does a cinematographer do?
The short is like he's responsible for it looking good. Mm-hmm. So, depending on the DP or cinematographer, it's like ensuring the shots look nice.
Okay.
So Deceiver, one of, I think, the better things about this film, or what something that really stands out, is that there's the film noir aspect of it is like totally dialed in.
Right. Absolutely.
And that would be Mr. Butler.
The stepping out of the shadows ratio was huge in this film.
Yeah, the way that Chris Penn's half of his face is lit all the time, just half. I don't know why that is, but they're just like, forget the left half.
We don't necessarily need that all the time.
He's a right half kind of guy. Not true. He's got a beautiful face. The editor is Dan Lebenthal. He did Dead Presidents in 95, Deceiver in 97, Very Bad Things in 98, Eminem's Real Slim Shady video in 2000.
What?
Yeah. From Hell in 2001, Elf in 2003.
Oh, that's a family favorite
Same
in my house.
editor.
Wow.
Yeah. Zathura, Space Adventure, 2005. The Breakup in 2006. Iron Man, 2008. Iron Man 2, 2010. Thor, Dark World, 2013. Ant-Man in 2015. Spider-Man Homecoming in 2017. And the new Spider-Man movie, Far From Home, in 2019.
Wow.
Yeah, still doing it. Actors. This is why I even was drawn to this movie.
They had a lot of people in this movie.
It's so crazy. Like the cover of the DVD, which you should totally buy, has so many people's heads on it and a questionable body at the bottom of it that we're not quite sure what's happening.
We had an extensive conversation before this about what exactly is the body part on the front of this
We
video.
know there's a knee.
Yes,
And then
and a
there's
foot.
something below it that I'm not quite
Not sure.
So definitely check that out and send your questions and inquiries to vh-us.website. I'm just kidding, .com. Actor, we're going to start off with Tim Roth. He's done too much good work, so I'm just going to name a few things. These are favorites. The first film I ever saw him in was The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover. That's 1989. He did Vincent and Theo in 1990, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead in 90, Reservoir Dogs in 92, where lots of people saw him first, Pulp Fiction in 94, Four Rooms in 95, Gridlocked in 97 with Tupac, Hoodlum in 97, Deceiver in 97, and Planet of the Apes in 2001.
Wow.
Yeah, so he acted with all the people in this movie and Tupac in the same year. That's incredible.
Yeah, that's when you know you're making it.
Then we got Chris Penn. He was in All the Right Moves in 83, Rumblefish in 83, Footloose in 84, Pale Rider in 85, At Close Range in 86, Reservoir Dogs in 92.
Wait, he was in Reservoir Dogs?
Yeah.
Huh, I gotta watch that
Beethoven Second in 93. That's our second reference to Beethoven Second. That's incredible.
I gotta watch that one.
To Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar, 1995. Mulholland Falls, 96. And Rush Hour in 98. He did other things, of course. But
Yeah.
Michael Rooker, who is just glistening in this movie.
Yeah, he is sweating the entire film.
So much.
Really, really hot.
Wow.
Yeah.
Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. A lot of people know him from that in 86. Light of Day in 87. Above the Law in 88. Mississippi Burning in 88. Days of Thunder in 1990. JFK in 91. Cliffhanger in 93. Tombstone in 93. Mallrats in 95. Deceiver in 97. Bone Collector in 99. Slither in 2006. A lot of TV. And that's all before getting huge roles on Walking Dead and being in the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yes, that's when I recognized him was the Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't remember his name, but he was like blue or something.
Yondu.
Yondu. There it is.
Then we got Renee Zellweger. Out of nowhere. You're just like, wait, who is...
Oh,
That's Renee Zellweger.
there she is.
And what's crazy is what happened in her career before this.
Really?
So, Dazed and Confused, 1993, she's uncredited.
Oh, yeah.
Reality Bites in 94. 8 Seconds in 94. Love in a 45 in 94. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The New Generation in 94 with Matthew McConaughey.
I didn't know he was in a Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Both
Because I
of
can never
them-
watch those. They're too scary.
Right. Both those actors tended to pick up steam at that time, and people have a theory that the movie was buried by the publicists or the people because they were like, don't put this out because they're getting traction in Hollywood. Don't show that they're slumming it in this TCM movie. But then Empire Records in 95, Jerry Maguire in 96, then Deceiver in 97.
Wow, she did Jerry Maguire before
The
this.
year before, and then Nurse Betty 2000, Bridget Jones' Diary 2001. I would have put it in any other order.
I know.
I would have put
Wow.
Deceiver before
Dazed and Confused.
Yeah,
me
for
too.
sure. Then we have Rosanna Arquette, She was always wonderful. You got to say Desperately Seeking Susan in
Yes.
85.
I used to love that movie.
So good. Silverado in 85, After Hours in 85, Pulp Fiction in 94, Crash in 96, Deceiver in 97, Buffalo 66 in 98, and tons of
remember that
television.
Wow. Yeah.
Yep.
I do like her.
Oh, she's great.
Yeah.
She's really good. I like all the Arquettes. Ellen Burstyn is in this movie.
That was so weird.
Yeah, she plays Mook.
Yeah.
So
A character named Mook.
Yeah, she appears in this film, for sure.
Indeed.
Some of Ellen's credits, and there's so many, so no disrespect to her. She's one of my favorite actors. The Exorcist in 73, Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore in 74, tons of TV movies, Deceiver in 97, Requiem for a Dream in 2000, which I have written down is the year I discovered that the Academy Awards are a sham. Watch Erin Brockovich and Requiem for a Dream and tell me which actor is giving a credible performance. It's Ellen every time.
And Julia Roberts won that year, huh?
Yeah. And it breaks my heart because Ellen's role in Requiem for a Dream just made me feel so sad for her. And she goes through all of these moments with the diet pill addiction, and I don't know.
She just kills it.
It's amazing, and it's I don't care about competing arts and awards and stuff like that,
Yeah.
but sometimes I think you got to be it should go to this person.
Yeah.
Julia, you're gonna keep
And she
making
got shafted.
Ocean's 8 movies or whatever they are, and as a result is probably why I only refer to Julia Roberts as Erin Brockovich.
From now on.
Yeah, it drives my wife crazy because I'm like, is that Erin Brockovich in that movie? And she's like, that's not the actress's name. Michael Parks is also in this film. He was in Tusk, From Dusk Till
Which one was
Dawn,
he in
Planet
this?
Terror, Death Proof, Kill Bill, and a ton of other stuff. He's the therapist that they go and talk to who first starts talking about
he plays a very intense and creepy therapist.
Yeah.
Okay. And he was in Kill Bill?
Yeah.
Huh.
He was
So
the
Tarantino
therapist.
thread through all of this. He was
Yes.
the therapist in Kill Bill.
Yeah. And in Tusk and From Dusk Till Dawn. No, he did a ton of work in the 70s and maybe a little earlier. So it makes sense that Tarantino would be like, this is my guy.
Yeah.
That's my Tarantino impersonation.
That was excellent, by the way.
This is my guy. I am Quentin Tarantino.
It's like he's in the room.
I know. He was not here. I'm not saying that he's here. One last credit I want to say for Ellen Burstyn is that she just was in a role playing Nana on Wiener Dog, which I don't know what it means, but I just wanted to say.
I was just going to say, what is that?
Because it sounds like a way a kid on an elementary school playground they'd be like, oh yeah, well I say Nana on Wiener Dog. I'm like, oh wow, okay. Hot take there, Timmy. All right, well that's all the time we have, so thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was great.
No, the credits were, it's just insane, the cast for this thing. And these guys hadn't done a movie before, and they have an amazing, cinematographer, super talented editor, and this movie is crazy.
One would think, wow, with this list,
You can't
how
go
could
wrong.
you go wrong?
You can't. Also of note is that the name of the character played by Renee Zellweger is Elizabeth Loftus. Mm-hmm. Did you look this up?
No.
It's a reference to the distinguished psychologist of the same name, noted for her studies in clinically created false memories. I don't know much about her, but cases that she's worked on, it's so many, it's an incredible amount of cases, involve O.J. Simpson, the mass murderers Ted Bundy and Willie Mack and Angela Bueno, Oliver North, Rodney King, the beating of Rodney King, the trial of the Mendez brothers, Bosnian war trials.
Wow.
It's still going. And Oklahoma City bombing, the Oklahoma City bombing case, and the litigations involving Michael Jackson.
Ooh.
So yeah, that's interesting. I have no idea what it means. I looked it up and my brain could not figure out what this Elizabeth Loftus was doing. If it's just about people constructing false memories or if it's about implanting false memories into people's heads.
Right.
I don't know. And then I was like, is that involved in this movie? And honestly, I'm not sure. And I've watched this a few times.
I know. I watched it twice and I'm just sitting here trying to think okay, how does it connect?
Yeah. But the piece that brought this film to you is that you are a polygraph examiner.
I am.
So for those of us that aren't polygraph examiners, could you tell us what a polygraph is and how does it work really?
a polygraph is basically it's a way, and it's been they started. Oh man, my history is probably not that great.
You don't have to get too factual.
So I won't. But it started, I think, a long time ago. It started in 1702 when they but it was a long time ago. What they found is that there's a correlation between your physiological response when you are being deceptive versus truthful. There's a difference there,
Okay.
and so.
Is it different than, say, like when somebody lies, they look to the left? Or is it like something physiologically with the brain?
Well, what it is it's primarily, I mean, I think that there are a lot of tells that they can find, and there's a lot of things that you can look at and they might cross their arms, or they may do certain things to show that they're, or not having eye contact or having too much contact can indicate truthfulness versus deception. But what polygraph deals with primarily is more of the physiological response. So the things that are involved with your autonomic nervous system and things that your body does.
Sorry.
The things that your body does involuntarily.
Okay.
Autonomic? Yes.
Okay.
And now, once you say it a couple times, it's like, is it autonomic?
Yeah,
yes, it is.
autonomic.
So when you, so what they found is that if you connect sensors to someone and you record what's happening in their body, then you can find kind of the different signs.
And is it different
with what your body is doing and how it's reacting when it answers certain questions?
Is it different from person to person?
It can, yeah, it very much can be, but there's certain things, and they've done a bunch of data analysis and things to find and studies to find, but definitely, I mean, when you have different people and different anxiety levels and different,
Which this movie touches on for sure.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh, this movie has so many, there are just so many moments. Yeah, so really it's just kind of, if you were to break it down, it's just basically you attach sensors to people and you interpret and read and score. So what it is that you look at it and you look at all these responses in the body, and then you can kind of look at that to score and look at whether or not they're being truthful when asked certain questions.
Now, the process that we're seeing in Deceiver from 1997, I'm guessing is very different from 2019.
Right.
So what are some of the differences? Are they still using paper and the little pen things that go back and forth?
Well, so I think that there are a lot of people that may use analog every once in a while.
Whoa.
It's so that basic pen and ink, and you saw him like he was refilling the actual ink in the.
The details are in there.
Oh yeah, and it's pretty. I loved that part because I loved watching the different kind of. But for me, it's all computerized.
Okay.
So it all plugs into a set, and I have it all connected to my computer. So I see those squiggly lines, but it's all on my computer. And
does the computer pre-grade, or is it still like?
Well, the computer can help you score, but I do it all I do it myself. I use the computer as a kind of a quality assurance or whatever, but primarily you do it yourself. And the main difference between 1997 and now too is, well, I mean, in that movie, it was like they took all kinds of liberties.
Yeah.
But I would say also I have a lot more like sensors for movement. So he was just sitting in a chair with nothing.
Yeah, he had something on his finger.
And so those are the sensors that go on your fingers. And
that's
those,
for like heartbeat?
Those look at your electrodermal response. So that is just looking at your skin, and it measures the kind of the conductivity of your skin, and it can look at different things like sweat, and it's and so it looks at that. Then you have the tubes that were on his chest and his stomach. Mm-hmm. Those look at breathing. Okay. And then the cardio cuff on his arm looks at blood pressure.
So I have a quote here from a different film from 2005. This is from Harsh Times. And a polygraph expert says, I've been doing polygraph tests since before you were swimming in your father's balls. Now, either you've got a tack in your shoe or you're clenching your butt. Is that an auto-mnemonic response, or?
That is someone who's trying to do what's called countermeasures. So countermeasures are what people do that are trying to beat the test. And to be honest, those are the two that I hear the most. So I'll ask everybody that I test, I'll say, okay, so what have you learned about polygraph? What have you researched? Or have you heard anything that could help you pass or try to trick the test?
Yeah.
And the tack in the shoe is number one. Everybody hears, oh, you put a tack in your shoe and then you step into it and it creates,
and clenching your butt's another one.
Clenching your butt is another one. But I have seat sensors, so I tell them, if you clench your butt, I'm going to know.
What about tack in the butt?
Tack in the butt is one of the lesser known ones. I would say
if you just flexed a little bit, you could get kind of the same toe response, but the plate would probably pick it up, right?
Yeah, I think it would be all picked up. And I think
I found a way around it.
If I ever give you a polygraph, I need to check your butt? Is that what I'm saying? Yeah, pretty much.
Probably.
Okay,
seeing how my brain went, I think, probably that's where it's going to go. So in the first scene, they're doing a polygraph with Tim Roth, and Chris Penn, after a couple questions, is like, "All right, I'm going to go correct this thing." Do you stop tests and correct while the person is present?
Well, no, and that was one of the differences.
We're going to find a lot of differences.
Yeah, there were so many. But what they... okay, yeah, we'll start there.
Yeah.
But what I do and what's common practice now, and it may vary slightly, but in general, what you'll do is you'll ask the same set of questions 3 times. Okay. So you have maybe a certain number of questions that you're going to ask. You ask that set of questions, and then you give the person a break because the cardio cuff, the blood pressure cuff, is inflated the whole time. So it can get really uncomfortable for a person if they're going to sit through it. So you give them a break in between each of the times that you ask, but you have them sit through all 3. And unless, of course, they need to, something else.
And you have things that are true. That's what happens in this movie anyways. They're like, your name is Tim Roth, which they don't say because that would be weird. But
right.
And then he's like, yeah, totally. And they're like, okay, all right.
Yeah, some kind of neutral. There's some neutral questions. Like I'll ask, is today April 27th or whatever? And so you have some of those questions, and then it goes into the rest of the testing.
Was the ending of the Avengers a good ending for a movie?
Yes.
Yeah. And if the person's like, no, you're like, bah, liar, you fail. You fail. Butt clencher.
Get that tack out of your butt right now.
Get out of here. So in the film, we're introduced to the characters, and we get stats, which is an interesting thing that's happening in this 1997 film.
They were also written very small.
So
and I'm
tiny.
like, am I getting so old that I have to actually put my nose to the TV to actually read? And I had to pause it because they also put them up so fast. Okay, I'm glad to hear that because I'm like,
they also don't have really much to do with anything that's going on in the movie. No. It's like, oh, he's single and never had kids.
Yeah,
and you're like,
he used to work at Walmart.
Yeah, it's just like, so what? Mm-hmm. But it's a very 1997 thing to happen.
It is.
You can feel the repercussions of something like Usual Suspects in a movie like this. Mm-hmm. So we get all of that. We get the number of kids they had. And then,
their IQ level.
Yeah, and then there's a part where it says confession rates.
Yeah.
So one of the things that's going to be different for this conversation is you're not a detective, which I'm guessing they're detectives.
There are, yes. And a lot of, they have a lot of police offices will have, and departments, I guess, will have actual polygraphers that work within their
like
their
a sketch artist.
Yeah.
Like they have the person who's like, this is the thing I do.
Their in-house polygraph examiner. Yeah, a lot of my friends do that. And so they specialize in that. I don't know the level of detective work that they do. I don't know that it quite matches what was going on in the movie. And they definitely don't have 2 of them in the room at the same time of the polygraph. Okay. That does not happen.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So then we get a flashback in the film that tells us how Chris Penn got in the hole, and we're introduced to Mook, which the whole time I was like, what is she doing, and why did they call her Mook? What is that about?
Which is funny because and I don't know why, for some reason in our family, it became a hilarious joke to call each other mooks all the time.
Yeah.
So I died laughing when there was an actual character, and it was Ellen Burstyn, no less. And I was like, what is this?
What a weird...
Why is she there? And what is happening? Apparently we needed that backstory.
Yeah, because the next thing we see is Tim Roth back in the polygraph, and he begins started taking shots at Chris Penn. Mm-hmm. Which brings us to something that I really love about Tim Roth. He's got a great range, and he can play like wild and crazy and super off the cuff and stuff. But I really like Tim Roth when he's talking in a quiet little, like, just like a frog voice.
Right.
And he's like barely alive. There's something so unnerving about him and his like dead shark eyes.
Yeah.
That, I mean...
I really like him.
Yeah.
I like watching him.
Oh, yeah. He is so good. I mean, and he just like... He's one of those people that's like white hot. Like you see him in Pulp Fiction or whatever and he's saying words, or Reservoir Dogs too, and it's just... You feel like he's going to attack somebody just with what he's saying.
Right.
He's so good. Okay. So... Then it starts to show little things. So Tim Roth he swallows, and then we see a tick on the machine.
Yeah.
So it's showing us that it's measuring everything. But what's the swallow meter? Is that the breathing that could pick that up?
So
or it's a hard swallow?
A lot of it is the movement part of it.
Got it.
And the things, and it's trying to make sure he's not doing anything strategically to try to mess with
Oh,
the
boy,
questions.
does he, though.
Oh, boy, does he, though.
Oh, goodness. Next, we get a flashback from the point of view of Tim Roth at 14.
Oh,
Which
yeah.
I'm like, how many? We're getting a lot of these. Then we're suddenly back in the seat, and Tim begins coughing so that he can make the machine go crazy.
Yes.
And he can go to the bathroom.
Yes.
I'd imagine this is a common move.
Not
Not a cough, but something that people are like, I've got to use the restroom to like get out of it.
Well, I will ask right before we get started. Like, do you need to use the restroom? There's definitely. I've had a few people go into coughing fits.
Yeah.
Right before. And I think, and it's so strange because I think that the human body does a lot of things when people get really nervous.
Oh, sure.
And especially when they're not wanting to tell the truth. I've seen some strange things. And one of them is
Hiccups?
no burps,
Oh.
actually. Yeah, like kind of like indigestion sort of stuff, like where it's
weird.
like, it's so strange.
like
Like
an
all of a
actual
sudden people get really
response.
gassy. And a lot of times when that happens, it ends up being where something was deceptive.
Oh, yeah. Are they ever like...
Sometimes
no,
it's
I
just
swear,
nerves, whatever,
I'm telling
but-
the truth.
No, thank God. I would.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is not a common, but
Okay.
I'm sure it's happening. I just don't hear it.
Well, those plates
I
would
see
know.
it. I see it on the sensors.
Yeah. So then in the bathroom, he takes pills. Can high people be polygraphed?
So there's definitely certain things that. So I always ask what medications people are taking before they start, and there's definitely things that if people are taking, then I would not.
They're like
I wouldn't
inhibitors.
test them. Yeah, and like for that one, they said he took something and it made everything go flat. So he took something that numbed him out or whatever. It was a epilepsy drug, I think is what they said it was. So
He takes like 18 of them, though. So I'm like, what? He like fills his hand with a pill and eats it, where I was like, oh, he's going to overdose. And then he's like, it's epilepsy medicine. And I'm like, they should make those pills stronger and give him less of them. Who's working at this pill factory?
I love how people in movies always take pills too. It's just like they shake them randomly into their hands and then throw them back. I was like, you didn't even look at how many pills you just took.
And they're always carrying them in the actual pill container.
Yes.
And it's like it's super loud when they take. And there's just like the whole time you'd be jingling and jangling everywhere.
And can we also add a side note that in the bathroom there was that random shot? Like, what do you call this? Like when police officers practice shooting and they have those posters of the body in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Like, how many police stations do you really think have that? We need
Of the ones I've been in the bathroom of?
every single one.
Mostly that's what the stalls are made of. It's very unnerving.
Well, and then I was like, are they practicing in the bathroom? Because that's a bad idea.
I've been in men's rooms. People should practice in men's rooms
that's
because
probably
there's
true.
urine everywhere.
Yeah, wouldn't be doing much damage.
No.
Men's are the worst.
It's so gross. Rooker tells a crazy story at this point. He delivers a great speech first about a guy outthinking himself. makes himself so nervous
I know.
that he's found guilty.
Why? And then at the end of it,
But is that
Tim
possible?
Roth says, "Why did you just tell me that?"
Yeah.
Which was hilarious because at the end of it, I said, "Why did you just tell him that?" And I think we almost said it at exactly the same time.
It's good writing.
Which was, I mean, if you think about it, that would just undermine the entire process.
Yeah.
When you're telling them that the polygraph didn't work. And in the same breath, he's like, polygraphs are foolproof.
Yeah.
And then he launches into this story about how a guy failed. He didn't do what he said he was doing, but he failed because he was nervous.
And he goes
It
to
was
prison
like-
and he never gets out.
Yeah, because every single time
He just
he was
fails.
pissing himself. He was so nervous. I was like, what are you talking about?
Anyway.
And why are you telling this
Anyway,
guy?
polygraphs always work. I'm the best storyteller. So then Rooker tells a crazy story about a man who fillets his own legs because he's drunk on absinthe. And he says, imagine thinking you're a 6-foot apple. Which is just a great line.
And by the way, don't you feel like absinthe got kind of a bad rap
Such
in
a
this
bad
movie?
rap.
It was like, wow. They make absinthe seem like...
In
Well,
1997.
I mean, obviously they make it sound like you drink absinthe and you're going to fillet your own skin
Yeah.
because you think you're an apple.
and cut your own
and
ear
that's viable.
off.
Yeah.
And all this, like... In 97, what was the deal with absinthe?
I don't know.
I think that the Pate brothers just thought rich people are the people who drink absinthe. And he's like, let's show how messed
It's
up these
the
rich
rich
people
man's
are.
drunk.
Yeah,
I
it
was
is.
like, what? And it comes up several different times.
Yes. He goes
The
and gets more
dangers of
from
absinthe.
Mook.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
it's
Is
total
absinthe
madness.
kind of blue? Was it kind of sort
Green.
of blue? It's a greenish
It's a
color.
weird
yeah,
color.
It was an off color. Okay.
You know what? I never realized.
I don't think I've had
is
absinthe
that
before.
in 1997, I could be wrong, I believe Nine Inch Nails released their single "A Perfect Drug,"
Oh yeah. I
in
remember
which
that song.
Mr. Reznor
Mm-hmm.
is. There's a lot of crow imagery and things, but he's also, I think, drinking absinthe in the video.
Yes.
So I don't know. I think it might be 99. I'll have
So
to
do you
check.
think they were trying to go anti to Reznor's pro absinthe
Yes.
video?
I think maybe they were trying to communicate with Reznor and be like, we know you're rich and evil now.
We see you, Reznor.
You were cool back in the day. We'll take you down. Next, we have Tim Roth telling a rape story. This is something I didn't notice the first time I watched the film. And in the second time I
noticed
watched
it right away.
I think I might have been making a gin and tonic or something the first time through. But he blames the rape on a dead kid. And the cop's takeaway in the scene is, so you admit you're a habitual liar.
Right?
No, he admitted to being a rapist.
He just admitted to being a rapist, and you guys aren't gonna. And didn't somebody at one point say, "Well, that's not a felony" or something?
No, that's later on. I'll get
is
to
that
that.
later? Okay, because I was like, and then he said, "Well, so," and I'm like, "Okay, so this guy just admitted
Yeah.
to raping someone,"
Yeah.
and then they lean forward and they're like, "So." You're gonna admit that you're a habitual liar,
Yeah.
and I was like, "That's our takeaway here."
That's not it at all. And then if the only thing more shocking is how quickly the movie just moves away from the fact that the person who's like the anti-hero somewhat of the film is a rapist.
Yeah, like it's not like it didn't even happen.
What?
What? I was so confused. That was like, what the hell
Yeah.
just happened? And they even had the flashback of him walking in to tell this
tell
girl.
the dad?
And he was like, so I couldn't have the guts to tell the girl. So I
Yeah.
decided I would tell her dad. And I was like, what? And then at the last minute, I
Yeah.
decided to blame it on a dead kid.
Yeah. It's one of the world's worst stories, really.
Wow.
If you're like, no, I'm a really good person. Let me tell you. So one time there was a sexual assault that I committed, but I was gonna tell her because I felt that was ruining her life.
I was going to come clean.
But then I was like, oh, maybe I'll tell her dad instead. And then I was like, oh, this dead kid did it. So anyway, I'm
End of
pretty
story.
cool.
And I'm like, what was the purpose of that? How did that even come up, Dirk? Do you remember?
It could have been an alternate title for this movie is, why would you say that?
So many times.
So many times.
The whole time I was like, what? Why did that happen? Why
Yeah.
did you say that?
It's totally absurd.
I thought the other alternate title could have been, "Bitch, go get me something to drink."
Yes.
Because I feel like throughout the whole time, someone was saying, "Bitch, go get me something to drink." And maybe they didn't say bitch, but
No.
that's how it felt. It
Well,
was very
Michael
the
Rooker
women
is
were all
sweating so
subservient.
much that he's got to be thirsty.
he's losing a lot of water
In his
weight.
defense, There's something wrong with his metabolism in this movie. And he's dehydrated.
Wow, yeah.
And then he's also
so that's
ridiculous.
why Rosanna Arquette's just got to keep him. Okay.
That's what it is.
Okay.
So
he
then,
never said please.
No. It's awful. Then Tim Roth accuses Rooker of infidelity. And so we get a flashback of that, which is always, at this point I was like, more flashbacks. Need more flashbacks.
You know what this show needs?
Yeah.
It's to go back in time a little bit more.
Non-linear storytelling.
So we really can't understand what's happening.
Yes. Then they offer
more.
him an out because they're like, this guy's high, so we'll let him leave. And then Chris is talking about Rooker, and he's like, this guy's performed thousands of tests, thousands. But what we don't learn is really how he started. Mm-hmm. We also don't know how you started. So before you give us that answer, I should warn you that I get one guess, and I am often staggeringly accurate.
Okay, I'm ready.
The year, 1987. A young Erin Parker, dressed head to toe in Esprit clothing and LA Gear high top, strolled past the casual corner in Southridge Mall, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Her goal? Not the Payless shoe store, nor Gadzooks. I did research. It was Woolworth's, wherein she would procure a polka dot scrunchie and an Arizona T-style full-print denim vest, thus nailing her DJ Tanner vibe for the dance.
DJ Tanner.
At the fitting room, she tried on the outfit and inquired to the attendant, "Do I look like DJ Tanner?" Without looking, the attendant replied, "Oh, sure." It was Annie Potts' brother. So Erin wore the outfit and got a red rod perm for her hair and wore her high-side ponytail and scrunchie, but learned it was a terrible combination for thick curly hair. She looked like a still from the movie Scanners when that one dude's head exploded. She had been lied to, thus setting her on the path to decipher who is the Deceiver.
Oh my God. How did you know?
Was that close?
I feel like you were there in my life.
I mean, I did look up a lot of images of that mall in Wisconsin.
Yeah, and DJ Tanner?
Well, she popped up.
Okay.
So I was like, I mean, you can only type in the word scrunchie and see so many photos before DJ Tanner.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of fact.
Yeah. So there are some factual accuracies there.
Cool.
So I will say that I did have a Woolworths in my hometown.
Okay.
And
was it Wisconsin?
I did go there. It was not Wisconsin. Actually, it was Wyoming. So W, I'm going to give it to you.
I get it mixed all the time.
I did have a perm.
Okay. Was it a tight Annie red rod perm?
No. Nope. It was a little bit looser than that. And one would ask, obviously, not anyone listening because they can't see me, but I do have naturally curly thick hair. So why did 80s Erin get a perm? You know, and only 80s Erin can answer that because at this point I have no idea.
And she'd probably say, "It's totally rad."
Maybe. Mm-hmm. That does sound a little like what I would say.
Okay.
But that is, in fact, not
how you did it. Well, I kind of know this because I knew previous jobs that you've had before this.
So you
but
sort of
how
know.
did you move from what you did before into being a polygraph examiner?
Well, I think it's just all sort of closely related. So, and it's kind of how we met is through my previous job. So I had worked for over 11 years or so at a residential group home for adolescent males that had sexually offended. Mm-hmm. And so I did treatment and, well, I didn't do treatment, but I helped. I was a supervisor and case manager and then also line staff and did a whole bunch of things within to help people get through treatment and get help for sexual offending issues. So part of that is that I noticed that there would be a polygraph examiner that came in and would do polygraphs with the juveniles. Mm-hmm. And I was fascinated by it because it's so strange. Like, it just seemed like such a strange event. And like, but I looked into it and I was just really fascinated by it. And I kind of came to a place, I kind of needed to back off of that job after a while because it's just after a while it starts to, it can be really heavy work.
Yeah. We know a number of people who have worked in that field.
Yeah.
And some of the things that people don't realize is that I don't know if I could say often, but many kids that have sexually offended were sexually offended
Right.
at an even younger age.
Right.
So you're kind of being steeped in one of the darkest subject matters on the planet.
Right.
And there's all kinds of things where there's therapeutic walkthroughs and things where there's, like details of specific traumas.
Yeah.
And it's not like, something that is not ungraphic, shall we say.
Right.
So there's only so much of that I could imagine that it's maybe healthy for someone to take on before maybe hopefully passing the torch on to the next person.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think one of the things that helps to keep you in the field is when you know that someone has been hurt, so that you can help heal some of that. And you can also see that it's not just one dimensional, that that there's all kinds of things. But you're right that multidimensional abuse starts to just get piled on. And when you're helping people with that, so you're not only dealing with the stuff that they've done and the ugly, awful things that they've done to hurt other people, but then you're also looking at all of the things in the histories of what's happened to them. And a lot of times their siblings. And then sometimes you even look back at like even their parents.
Right.
So you can see just this multiple generational abuse. And so I just stepped back after a while because it was starting to impact just a lot. But so I stepped aside for a while and I did other work with families and children in another area. And then, I was looking some stuff up and talking to people, and I just kind of came back to that fascination that I had with the polygraph examiner and the work. And I've always felt, and it sounds kind of weird to say, but I always felt drawn to helping in that field. I think that there's a part of it there that I think I can compartmentalize to do the work at all. And I feel like it's really important. So I decided, I'm going to look into this and see kind of what else, what it would take to be a polygraph examiner. And then that's sort of how I decided. I'm like, I'm gonna try this and see how it goes. And I'm relatively new to the field. I've been doing it for just a few years now, and so far I've really enjoyed being in the field.
That's interesting because I think if I picture a polygraph examiner outside of Chris Penn and Michael Rooker, half your face is lit.
And you always unbutton your shirt about 4 buttons down if you're Chris Penn.
Yes.
I wanted to button that so bad.
Oh my God. That's
Please,
ever since
Chris.
Footloose. He's
Just
like,
one.
these 2 buttons unbuttoned. I picture an older person for polygraph.
Maybe a mustache.
Yeah, it just seems, maybe it's because of the portrayals in film or TV where you see the old machine, the analog, as you said.
Yeah.
I picture someone that almost looks like Dr. Kevorkian age, like just being like, So.
Well, I do think that the field, just kind of looking back into, like, if you look at the history of things, and a lot of, there definitely were women in the field, and now I feel like there's a lot more women in the field, but there was sort of that old school kind of, a lot of older men, or just, just a lot of men in the field up until, and I don't know how long it's been, but it's definitely now there's a lot of colleagues that I've met out here are just amazing women, and they do a great job. And so it's really cool, but I don't think that's a wrong perception, because I think for a while it was just kind of a lot of older white men.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, glad they're mixing it up.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was off a little bit. Next, Tim reveals that he has epilepsy. And so the cops go to look into epilepsy and how that'll help him pass a polygraph.
By going to the creepiest psychologist that's ever lived.
So creepy.
And why can't he talk to them directly? Like, he had his head turned at a weird angle. Yeah. What? I don't understand that guy at all.
He's like, you can come over anytime you want, apparently, and I'll be either in a very dark corner or in my kitchen. So,
and I'm going to tilt my head in an awkward angle.
Just a little bit.
And say things very creepily.
Yes. Then Tim Roth has temporal lobe epilepsy and hallucinates that he stabs his mother in such a weird scene.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, wow, this movie's turning quick. And then it's just like, no, that didn't happen. And then they keep saying, like, if you have epilepsy, you're like super crazy murderer. You're barely on Earth. And like, I don't know.
You're going to stand on furniture. The big thing was the standing on furniture.
Standing on chairs, which I didn't know this, but my daughter's epileptic. We keep telling her.
You're like, get off the furniture.
Quit being so epileptic on chairs is what we always say to her.
Well,
it's very insensitive, I'm sure. And I apologize to anyone with epilepsy.
Well, I also going back to the stabbing scene.
Yeah.
As you know, I'm not great with blood in general, but it wasn't like I couldn't watch it. But the thing that stood out to me was him buttering the bread. Yes. So he stands up, stabs his mom, and there's like blood all over the knife, and then he leans over and he gets butter and puts it. I don't know why I thought that was just genius. For some reason, part of the scene was like, yeah. Although the rest of it was like, what?
And then it's just
happening?
Like, no.
I don't know what's happening. But
No,
the buttering of the bread, I don't know why. And then, of course, it's all bloody. And it's like, wow.
Then next we have Rooker's wife wants to have sex with him, and he's like, I'm not into it.
And why did she want to have sex with him?
I don't know.
He seemed so mean all the time.
This is when I wrote down, none of these people are getting along.
No.
And this movie is made up of so many people, and none of them get along.
Nobody likes anybody.
Nobody.
In this film. Like,
not at all. No one actually feels connected to anybody.
Yeah.
I would argue that these people are so disconnected that that's one of the strangest parts of this disjointed movie is that, like, some people are in the same scene together, but are they?
But are they really? And, like, for example, I don't think we talked about this, and I think it was before the bed have sex with me scene, is when she comes home and he accuses her of cheating.
Oh, yeah.
And then he looks obviously pissed, right? And he looks like he's accusing her of having cheated. And then he's like, could you give me something to drink?
Yeah.
And she's like, okay. And I was like, if that would have been me and my husband, I'd have been like, wait, what? What's happening?
Yeah.
Like, are we doing that now?
At that point, Sarah was like, she's wearing the same white dress that Renee Zellweger was wearing in the beginning, which is revealed later on. But I was like, oh, what is happening in this movie? Because it's not revealed yet. But yeah, and then Michael Rooker pours the orange juice on the ground, and then he throws the glass, and he's like, clean it up. And he didn't even take a drink.
No.
Which is weird for how sweaty he was. But
for how dehydrated. And
dehydrated.
And then she's on the floor, and he leans down and is like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And I'm like, motherfucker, she's cleaning up the orange juice you just spilled all over the floor.
I'm like, is this improv?
What is happening?
Or did he literally forget, like, what scene is this?
Yeah.
He's like, I don't know what my next line is.
Line? What are you doing?
I don't know. I'm going to go with
Where are we?
More sweating. Sweat acting is what he was really bringing to the...
But it was incongruous. I think that is totally true. Like, it's just another scene where, like, you're like, that woman is not reacting to what that man is doing. And then all of a sudden the man is acting like he doesn't know why she's doing it. And, yeah. It's all very strange.
And then Chris Penn pays half the money he owes to Mook, but to a guy in a confessional booth.
Yes.
And I love this part. Because he asks the dude he's giving the money to, and the guy's like, you owe us more. And he's like, oh, I'll get it to you, but, like, can you say a prayer for me? And the guy's like, what? And Penn says, you're still a priest, right? And the guy's like, oh, right, whatever. It's, like, so crazy that in this story, with just a matter of a few words, they paint the picture of this guy that's totally, like, in with the mob or whatever it is that Mook's doing. But yet he's still a priest. But yeah, he's completely forgotten in this moment. And he's just like, oh, right, I'm a priest.
Oh, yeah, we're in a confessional.
It's like a cop that's really bad at undercover. But he's like in the right outfit and in a specialized setting, like where you would not forget that.
Yeah.
It's so bizarre.
Like, how did you forget? And then he's like, I think he says, like, God be with you.
Yeah, I don't know. God be with you.
That was it?
You know, whatever you need, dude.
Yeah.
It's so bizarre.
That was so strange.
Then we get a flashback. It seems like he's being honest and talking about when he first sees Renee Zellweger. And he's like, and then she, like, asked me for a cigarette. No, he says, like, hey, do you want a drink?
Yeah.
And he says, hey, do you have a cigarette? And so there's, like, this twist of, like, oh, it's like a detachment of the
what
truth
he's
and
saying
lies.
And what's actually happening.
That was interesting. But it was just so disjointed at the same time. And it goes straight into an epileptic fit. And then he kicks the living shit out of Michael Rooker. Like, he beats him so hard.
Okay, right? And I'm like, okay, I don't know a lot about police procedure, but this seems a little like they wouldn't just let this guy walk out of the police station after beating the shit out of the detective polygraph examiner.
It is wild. And they're like...
I was like...
Chris Penn's like...
Shouldn't have touched him.
Yeah, well, that's what the guy they're going to see about it. He's like, that's what you shouldn't have done. You shouldn't have touched him. And he's like, but none of this admissible in court.
No.
And I'm like, it completely is.
You sort of just videotaped him beating the shit out of
a police
policeman.
officer.
So wouldn't that be admissible? It's
so crazy.
Would we say that's not?
And then Chris Penn's like,
thing?
He's got broken ribs and a cracked eye socket.
Yeah.
And then we see Michael Rooker, and he's just sweating more. He's not even beat up. It's like he broke his sweat gland, is what they should have said. Because they're like, he's just glistening now, like even more so.
Yeah. I wonder if there's a person standing off camera that's just got a water bottle.
Yeah.
It's just like, more sweat, please. Because every scene,
guys-
he looked sweatier.
We need to glaze Rooker again. Does anyone have Vaseline we could put on his face?
Okay.
He's wetter in this than in the movie Slither when he's covered in like Vaseline and stuff.
Yeah.
And prosthetics. It's wild.
It's a problem.
Then there's this card trick part that's interesting where they put these cards out.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, pick a card with your eyes. Is this your card?
Right.
And Tim Roth's like, no. And I'm like, they won't play this scene for 5 more minutes. And he's like, is this your card? And I was like, oh, they are.
They are going to go
do
the
this.
whole way through this.
And he points to the card that he did pick. And he says it's not his card. And then they show the machine. And the machine's like, yeah, no, it's fine.
Yeah.
And then he gets to the end and he's like, this your card? And he's like, no. And then he somehow makes the machine go crazy.
Yeah. And, the thing is that that's actually, you can do that with, you can do that. And some people, I think, in the past have done that even as a practice test where they'll have like, hey, pick a number. But number one, they'll have the person write down what their answer is. Like, okay.
yeah.
And number two, like, why would he want to tip his hat?
Yeah.
If he can do something to physiologically control his own responses, why would he tip his hat to them
is
to
he
be like,
showing
hey
him?
guys, you're not going to know if I'm lying or not.
Yeah.
Boom. No.
No, they would.
He doesn't act like a guy who really wants to be seen as innocent for some reason. Like, he wants to tell them he's raped people.
Yeah.
He wants to show them he's fucking with the test. It's like, what exactly...
There's even a part later on where Mook's like, why are you doing this? And I was like, I think we're all wondering why any of this is happening.
Why is he not in jail right now for beating the crap out of the guy in the last scene?
Nobody knows.
Don't know.
Then Tim goes and talks to the stripper in the stripper booth on the phone. I've never seen one of those stripper booths except for in movies.
Looked very unhygienic.
I don't know why the phones were ever there.
Nope. But so it's like she's in the booth and that's the only way they can hear each other.
Yeah, you pick up the phone and you're like, oh, this is a gross phone. Like, I don't know what you would say exactly.
Well,
but
and if it's supposed to be a stripping booth, like, really, like... I mean, because he did say, like, we just do a lot of talking.
Right.
But in general, that's not very practical for a stripper to have to hold up a phone.
Right.
If she's going to try to take her clothes off. Like, don't you need both your hands for that?
Yeah, and she's just laying down the whole time.
No, she's just lounging.
It's really weird.
Talking about how weird he is.
Yeah, and then they're dating, so they go to a party, and they laugh super crazy.
Really outlandishly.
Really super crazy. I'm not sure why.
Don't know.
Then
It's not really explained
No.
what that explosion was with the parents.
No.
And then she's like, you can be so cruel. And I was like, but what?
Yeah.
I didn't understand how that was cruel.
I have
Just
no idea.
Crazy?
And she's like, and we were so drunk. And I'm like, I don't know if that's drunk. I don't know what they were. It's very bizarre. But they drank the house dry, I think they say at one part. Then they were back at the polygraph, and Tim knows about everything in these people's lives, every detail in the two detectives' lives. And then he says, because he's rich, and he can do whatever he wants and know everything because he's rich.
Yeah. There we go.
These dudes hate rich
They
people.
really, really do.
They're like, you know who's the worst? Rich people.
Rich people. They can pay people so they don't know all the details.
And absent. Weird stuff then happens. That's what I wrote because I'm like, what is going on now? And then he's got the absinthe and he gets the drugs from Mook. And then there's a rave happening, but you don't see anything. He's just at a table and there's banging techno music for like 60 seconds.
Right.
And then I just wanted to mention that you can get traditional full-service absinthe at Lemuel in Portland.
Oh,
so if you are
nice.
interested in getting the whole sugar cube thing and all that, you can go to Lemuel.
If this podcast makes you thirsty for some absinthe.
If you want your life to be like Tim Roth's in Deceiver.
Just don't come blaming Dirk if you flay all the skin off your legs.
Yeah, don't go
like an apple.
thinking you're a 6-foot apple. Then he gets wasted with Renee at the train station. And then there's another thing that in this scene that I think is very interesting. So they're both laying down somewhere at the train station, kind of up against a wall.
Right.
And they're having this little talk. And then it shows him look. And this movie has so many parts where you're like seeing through a camcorder or you're seeing through a 14-year-old's eyes. There's so many different points of view in the film that we don't know who it is that's seeing this, but it shows someone walking with two suitcases.
Yeah.
And then we've found out, I think, by this point that Renee is murdered and then she's cut in two and put in two separate bags and found at the train station. So I was like, oh, Tim Roth saw the murderer because there's the person with the two bags. But that's not the case at all. So this scene just kind of goes on and nothing comes from that.
Right.
And then we get to one of the wildest things that we mentioned in this movie where Rooker's wife's infidelity, there's a whole history of things. And then he plays a tape of Renee and Rooker where Rooker's attacking her. And Michael Rooker says, what is on that tape isn't a felony.
Again.
I Googled it because I'm not a detective. But things that are felonies, rape and assault, both felonies. And I'm not a detective, but he hired a prostitute and I'm guessing didn't pay her.
Right.
That's probably against the law as well.
Yeah.
So the only logical step is that Tim Roth give Rooker a polygraph. So Michael Rooker's character gets in the seat.
This was so absurd.
And Tim Roth gives him a polygraph. The jump between this, I made one note that just said, he's a terrible policeman.
Just so bad.
He's the worst.
There's so much wrong with this entire scene. Well, this movie, but that entire scene was insane.
Yeah.
It's like, well, then prove it. It's like, okay, but didn't we just watch a video of him like beating her? I mean, I guess prove it that she didn't murder her, but then the only logical step is that Tim Roth's character then conducts the polygraph.
Well, he's got to, because Chris Penn, for most of this movie, is standing 8 feet away from everybody else, half lit, and saying things like, What? You do that to me?
Maybe I should unbutton my shirt.
Oh, can I borrow some money? Like, that's all he has to do. He's a great actor and so underused in this, where they give like all the wild speeches to sweaty Michael Rooker.
Yeah. And at some point, I was waiting for him to be like, dude, stop calling me stupid.
Yeah.
Like, how many people like made fun of his intelligence in this show?
So many. They're just like,
So
you're dumb.
many.
And you know, it's the residuals from the 80s where like the person that's of weight is the person they're going to call stupid.
Yeah.
You know, because it's like he hasn't shown, I mean, there's no need for that unless the people that wrote it also hate people who aren't tiny. Could be. So then I wrote in all caps, everything happening in this movie is crazy.
It's just nonsense.
Yeah. And then Rooker's so sweaty now.
Yeah.
He's hit like peak sweatiness for this movie. And he's in the chair and it shows Chris Penn and he looks like he's going to cry. He's got like tears in his eyes. That his friend's receiving a polygraph from a madman. And, like, I feel like it's not normal office hours when this is happening.
No. I think actually they said meet me at 6. I think because when I watched it the second time, because I'm like, when are they there?
Yeah.
This is crazy. A side note. When they were in that office before, remember that all of a sudden the shutters went up and they were like totally wrestling a dude in the background?
Yeah.
Did you catch that too? Anyway, this office, I don't know what's going on in there.
That's the wildest.
I, again, don't know police protocol, but I feel like after somebody shows a video of the polygraph examiner like beating a prostitute that was later murdered, maybe calls for like, hey, let's stop.
Yeah.
Go get somebody else. Maybe end this conversation.
Well, and also like everything in this room is being filmed.
Yes.
We know this because they showed the therapist guy. There's not normally a TV and a VCR. So when Tim Roth is like, hey, I'm going to show a video, he would have had to go to the AV department and been like, I know I'm not a policeman, but can I check out a TV and a VCR? And they're like, what for? And he's like, I just got to show him a tape.
Yeah.
And they're like, what kind of tape? And he's like, I can't really tell you. You'll have to just watch the tape of this that's going to happen in an hour. I don't know. It's very strange. So then there's a scene where there's a story about a bribe. Tim almost leaves. Then there's Russian roulette, a standoff. Rooker almost shoots Tim Roth and then tells him to talk. And if he lies, he's going to kill him. At which point I wrote, all of this is admissible in court. All of it.
Right.
Nothing's been compromised throughout this entire situation.
None of this is going to be a problem.
So he takes drugs.
Yeah.
And then he starts talking.
Right.
And he says he found her dead, but then he cut her up into 2 pieces because his fingerprints were everywhere and he didn't want to be a suspect.
The most ridiculous reason. I can't even remember what I wrote, but I remember.
It's literally what he says, though.
I was just like, what?
Yeah. I wrote,
what is that? How does that make the story more reasonable?
I put, the old sever the prostitute defense. I couldn't have done it, sir. I merely cut her in half. My fingerprints were everywhere, and I had to get them out somehow, so I just split her in half and poured all the fingerprints off of her body. Mm-hmm. And then Tim Roth gets so huffy. It's like a long scene of him being super huffy.
That was too much breathing.
Yeah, and then he collapses. Mm-hmm. And we're like, oh no, what's going to happen now in this movie? And then you see the EMS guy, and he works for Mooks. And you're like, wait a second. 1 year later.
5. Was it 5?
I
No,
think
1.
1.
Sorry,
it just
sorry,
says
sorry,
1 year
sorry.
later,
You're
and I was like,
yeah.
okay. And then the funeral guy is the guy that ratted out Chris Penn. And you're like, oh, some cover-up's happening. And then the film, you see Chris Penn retiring and 2 cops being like, he was about to retire, like, previously or something. And then he gives money back to Michael Rooker, who's still going to be a dirty cop.
Yeah.
And then it just shows Tim Roth be a serial killer. And then it's like, and Finn. The movie's over.
That was it.
The
He
1
said
year
some
later
super
scene
creepy
is
thing
like
to another lady.
a minute and a half
it's over.
long. It's the weirdest. 1 year later, I'm like, oh, there's more to this. And then they're just like, not really.
No, it's going to show him being creepy to another lady that might be a prostitute, who happened to just be hanging out with an unlit cigarette in the middle of the night on a bench.
In 97, people had such trouble lighting cigarettes.
Yeah, it was really tough.
There was like 4 lighters, and mostly rich people
the ladies
could afford
were
them.
so busy getting other people drinks that they just couldn't. They couldn't get
I
themselves.
can't light the cigarette.
This is just like, I can't. Well, I don't know. When it started rolling the credits, I was just like,
Yeah, you were like, I have to watch it again because the ending happened, and I was like, what?
what?
Yeah.
Huh?
Even the second time, you're like, what?
Yeah. Well,
It's-
in the transition, like from the interrogation scene where then he gets to polygraph the polygraph examiner, and then
Favorite part of the
all of
movie.
a sudden he's taking pills, and then all of a sudden he's threatening to kill him unless he tells the truth. And at some weird point, he holds a gun to Chris Penn.
Yeah.
And of course, Chris Penn looks at him and does the movie thing where he says, "Do it."
Yeah.
Why do people do that in movies?
Well, I
I don't
think
believe
at
if
that-
someone was holding a gun to my head,
Yeah.
my first thought would ever be just do it.
I think we're supposed to believe that he's so dumb and his heroes have turned out to be so terribly flawed.
he's ready to go.
That he's just like, there's only one way out of this for
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
And that's retiring. Or you shoot me.
Or
so
you shoot me, like my world has crashed.
And
so
I know the
might as well be
paperwork
dead.
involved in retiring, so you might as well just do
It's gonna
it.
just be a pain.
Just shoot me.
Okay, all right. Well,
Yeah.
glad you could explain that part because I was like, what is happening? And it all
Yeah.
seamlessly, and then all of a sudden, he has an epileptic seizure, stands on the furniture,
Yeah.
and then
And collapses. So I don't usually reach out to directors. That's not the point of this program. But I wanted to because I felt like maybe there was some reshoots. Maybe there was something with the funding because even just the 1 year later part feels like somebody was like, we got to know what happened. It didn't feel like maybe it was originally set up
Finished?
this
Yeah.
way. And some of the pacing and stuff seemed very strange because everyone's performances are amazing. It's just so disjointed.
yeah,
And it can't be the editing because the editor's amazing.
yeah,
So I feel like maybe someone messed with I don't know. It's just an interesting
Yeah.
movie, and it's the only one where you're going to see the felon or the con get to give a polygraph test to the detective. So far, I mean, there's hopes that they'll reboot this.
yeah.
Avengers is done, so all those actors have to do something.
Something's got to happen.
That's the same amount of
Maybe
people
that's
that were in
Tarantino's-
Deceiver. I don't know who we would cast as who, but like that Hawkman or whatever his name is could be Tim Roth, maybe.
Yeah,
Chris Penn could be played by Chris Pratt. He's in that
Yeah,
movie, right?
he
He
is.
could put the
Good
weight
work.
back on.
yeah.
He'd love that, I bet.
Yes.
David Bautista could be Renee Zellweger
Okay.
in a twist. I
I
mean, we
like
got to
it,
modernize
yeah.
it.
I mean, we got to make it right.
Michael Rooker can play Michael Rooker. Is he in the Avengers movies? Yondu?
No, I don't think he is.
But there's a lot of the raccoon, right?
Maybe he is. There is a lot of the raccoon.
That's what I
We
heard.
could have the raccoon jump in.
The raccoon can be Mook.
Mook, indeed.
Okay, well, I mean, I don't have any other thoughts about Deceiver, but I have some final questions for you.
Okay.
Are there any common misconceptions about either polygraphs or being a polygraph examiner?
Well, I think that there's just so little known about it. Like, it's just not a common occupation. I think a lot of people are like, oh, am I going to be strapped in the chair? A lot of people think of Meet the Fockers, so they think it's going to be the whole
Casserole conversation.
the whole cast. And a lot of people think it's involving casseroles, which is always a problem.
They're always interrupting and being like, are we going to talk about casseroles? Most of this is about me being kind of mischievous, but I'd prefer to talk about casseroles.
Yeah. And then I think in general, just there's a lot of misinformation online and things where people will come in and say, well, this is just a test to see if my heart's going to beat faster or if I'm nervous. And
Misinformation online. I've never heard of this.
Weird. Yeah. So, I mean, I wouldn't say there's anything. Oh, and, I guess one of the biggest misconceptions is that you could put a tack in your shoe.
Yes.
And that would work. Because it wouldn't. But yeah. So those are kind of the main ones
Imagine
I've run
somebody
into.
has pressed too hard on the tack and then it just so bummed the rest of the time they're there that they're just like, I've got a tack in my toe.
This really hurts really, really bad.
I'm eventually going to bleed through these sandals.
Yeah.
Also,
well, and
don't
I
wear
have them
sandals.
take their shoes off. So that kind of prevents.
Including sandals?
Yeah.
Are Crocs considered shoes?
Yeah, they are.
Oh, jellies?
I would have them jellies. Jellies are considered shoes as well.
Okay.
Please take off your jellies. I don't know.
Sir,
I would be
please take
super
off your
worried just
jellies.
about anybody coming in with jellies in
Okay.
general.
Fair enough.
That was an 80s Erin apparel, by the way.
Jellies?
Oh, I had some jellies.
Being a boy in a small town, wasn't allowed to have jellies, but I was pretty jelly of the ladies that had them.
Yeah.
They came in pink and blue, I
Oh,
think.
yeah. I had a clear pair as well.
Did they hurt your feet?
Yes.
It seemed
They
like
were highly uncomfortable.
so many abrasions.
So,
Yeah.
sometimes I tried to wear socks with the jellies.
Oh, right.
But, it doesn't work.
Yeah,
It's just,
those socks with like the scalloped edges at the top. Yeah.
well, and there was a phase there for a while where I would wear multiple socks at once.
yeah, of course.
The whole layer look. And that was
long
when you,
sock with
you
a
pin your
pom-pom
pants.
sock?
Yeah, you got to have.
The rest of my questions are all pom-pom sock related. What is a good day like for a polygraph examiner?
Well, a
Or
good
do you-
day.
Another question. Are there
Yeah.
multiple in a day?
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of times. So how it works for me is I primarily do testing for people that have sexually offended. I do some domestic violence tests, and but at this point, that's kind of my primary role. There are some people that do more of the like law enforcement or attorney related, but I tend to do through parole and probation offices. So I'll go to the offices and then I'll have maybe 3 or 4 in a day. I don't like to do, I like to do 3, I think, in general, but just because my brain feels pretty heavy when I'm finished. It's a lot of talking about heavy information. But
Welcome to my new podcast, talking about heavy information.
here's our new guest. I would say a good day for me would be 3, and they all pass, and it's totally clear, and it looks good, and so
They're on the path to getting better.
Yes, everybody's happy. No one's been offended.
Great.
Things are looking good.
Yeah.
That would be a really good day. No one has smelly feet. Sometimes that happens, and that's
Well, I'm not looking forward to this question then,
Oh,
because
boy.
what is a very bad day like for a polygraph technician?
Well, there is a test that I do. It's called the full disclosure, which is just going over someone's entire sexual history to make sure that there's nothing else that's happened as far as offenses. And part of that is just going through everything to make sure that they can delineate between what was an offense and not an. I mean, there's just a lot to it.
Yeah.
And there's actually been. I've had a couple of days where I've had 3 full disclosures in a row, and those are days where I'm pretty by the time I'm finished, I'm just kind of a little bit. I'm a little bit toasty. And so a really bad day is when, and there's some adult testing I've done where it's just a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot can happen to anyone. And there's a lot of healthy sexual experiences you can have throughout your life. But sometimes when you're testing somebody that's in their 50s or something, and there's just a lot of things that are done.
Just the cyclical thing of abuse.
Yeah. And that's a really good point, because another part of the sexual history is things that have happened to you as well. So so that can make a day go south real quick, because it can be really, really
it's a
hard
lot to take
hear.
in. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I can take in the information and then I can get rid of it as soon as it's done. I don't have to keep it. I'm not a therapist.
Right.
I don't have to do.
You're not okay, for our next polygraph, we'll try to get to this step. And
I am not responsible for healing. I'm not responsible for getting them to a new place. And so in a way, I can take that information and I can let it go.
And what is,
afterwards.
So after you do, say, the polygraph and someone's doing a full disclosure, that information would then go to their therapist, or how would that information be used to help this person hopefully move on their process?
So a lot of times it depends on they sign releases and of who it can get released to, but a lot of times it goes to their treatment team. So that would be their parole officer and then their therapist, and then anybody outside of that. And then through them, it can potentially, it could maybe potentially make it into court, like where they say, well, have you passed a polygraph? Do you have the polygraph report? So that could go there as well. But for the most part, those are the most common people it goes to, is their probation officer and then the therapist.
So they would say, if they pass it, then that report goes to the team, and then the team looks at it and they're like, oh, you're, things are going well, you're getting better, and they could change I don't know.
Right. Well, and I think with a full disclosure, they're just looking at okay, are there more victims out there? Are there people that you've heard that you haven't talked about? Are you deliberately hiding something? Because then that can show them that, okay, there might be more work here, or it also can look at different predilections that might be more dangerous. So, it's not necessarily dangerous that someone looks at porn, but it could be dangerous if they're looking at porn that involves children or people acting like children, or, so it can kind of give that heads up to the POs that something unhealthy may be happening here, and we can kind of get. So sometimes in tests that can kind of filter out, and they can kind of sort of look at what, and so it means that I ask a ton of awkward and really, really personal questions.
So you probably have to use very clinical words for things, because I'd imagine there's questions about the human body.
Yeah.
Where you wouldn't be like, so you're twigging berries. You'd have to.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't ever say twig and berries.
No,
you're
but
right.
You would have to address things that most people would blush, and this is a person you don't know.
It's true. And I try to, because, and to be clear, a lot of these discussions are all before the actual polygraph test happens. So it's you're discussing all of the history and kind of doing the pre-test work of how do you have everything out, and have you discussed everything you need to? So in the actual polygraph, it's not a lot of questions, and it's mostly, specific to is there anyone else, or as an adult, have you had, sexual contact with someone that's a minor,
just to make sure
like
you
that.
have it clear before going into the polygraph.
So you ask, and it is some of it, though, I also have to kind of use the words that they use, So depending on
what?
And I don't get vulgar with it, but no, sometimes they'll say, well, I did this or did that, and I'll kind of, sometimes I'll say, oh, you mean you used digital penetration or something, but but I do penis, vagina. I'm not gonna go slang with a lot of that, but it can be really bizarre, and sometimes I'll leave and I'll think, wow, this is my job. I just talked about masturbation for 15 minutes.
So you wouldn't say you were riffing on your boner.
No, but I should start, because that would be fabulous.
You'd probably say digital manipulation.
How many times a week do you really riff on the boner?
Yeah. A real solo.
No, just masturbation.
Okay.
Yep, just yeah.
But even that, there's some people that go their whole life and they can't even say that.
It's true. It's true. And, sitting down with this I am a perfect stranger to a lot of these people. Right. And it's I understand. I get it. I would suck. Who wants to talk about that stuff with other people? So, but fortunately in therapy, in especially when you've done sex offender therapy, it's I think they get kind of used to having a lot of those terms out,
Right.
and saying that stuff.
Well, and especially after like 11 years in a subject matter,
Yeah.
you've kind of heard a lot of things.
Yeah.
So unfortunate as it sounds, it makes it easier to probably, gonna guess, sort of take in what they're saying and be able to like look past it rather than be like, oh gosh, I've
Yeah.
never looked at that vegetable the same ever since, you know?
Yeah,
So it's like
yeah.
you just kind of move on. And
It takes quite a bit to shock me at this point. And not saying that that's, but I think after a while you just kind of, I think a big thing too is it's a human being,
Yeah.
And it's, and I think, there's definitely sometimes people that you're in a room with that you're like, wow, that's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
It's pretty horrifying. But for the most part, I try to just, I've talked about this stuff for a long time. It's not that tough for me anymore. And also I can compartmentalize things pretty well, I think.
And like you said, it's helpful that you don't have to live in that.
I don't. And
Yeah.
I don't have to, I'm not responsible for the end of what happens
Right.
to them. I'm not their PO. I'm not their therapist.
It's that team.
I have one job, and
Yeah.
and it's like, I'm going to go over your information. I'm going to test you on this information. I'm going to write the report and give it to you. And then, so that helps me to stay kind of sane, is that I'm not responsible for the
Yeah.
outcome of what happens to that person.
What are your favorite things about being a polygraph examiner? Hours?
Yeah, I can make my own hours, which is good.
Yeah.
I can, I have my own. I think a lot of this stuff is weirdly fascinating. Like, I think, and I also think that the criminal system is fascinating. I think that,
Are there polygraph examiners that only work in other subject matters? Like, is there a bank robber polygraph examiner? It's like, I didn't say it.
I think that, there's some people that I've met that are like, yeah, I'm not real interested in testing juveniles. Or there's some people that are like, I don't really want to test adults. There's some people that do a lot of work in jails and prisons. And there's some people that do a lot of just attorney. So I think you can kind of gear, there's people out there that won't do sex offender polygraphs. So yeah, there's definitely, you can kind of pick which vein you want to go down.
Because you did pick one kind of in line with what you're previously doing.
I did, what
Yeah.
I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People that are out there that may possibly want to be a polygraph examiner, is there any advice you would have for people?
I would say really just kind of looking up and trying to see. There's a lot to it that I think it can be tricky at first if you're not ready for the content, or if you're it can be as well. I guess I'm just going from the angle of like, if you're going to do tests for people that have offended. But yeah, I would just say do research and see if it sounds like, talk to people that do it.
Would you recommend that someone do social work prior to
No,
that?
a lot of people don't. Like, a lot of people have more of a criminal justice background. Some people don't have, any background in either. I think, so just kind of looking at, it just kind of depends on, I think for certain programs you have to have certain like schooling requirements and stuff.
Okay.
But definitely, I don't know that a lot of people do have the same kind of background as I do. I think there's everybody just kind of comes
a
different.
clinical kind of way.
I think a lot of the people I've met have had more of the sort of police background or detective background, or but that's not everyone. I mean, everybody's got kind of a different background. But yeah, so just talking to people that do it and see if it sounds like something you'd want to do.
And before we get to my last question, there was something that you told me once about somebody that had worked in polygraph or maybe created polygraph and something with plants.
Yeah, so I went to the Baxter School of Lie Detection is where I went to
Next
school.
to Hogwarts.
Doesn't it sound fabulous?
Yeah, it really does.
But one of the people that was like the director of the Baxter School, and he has since passed away, but he started to do, he would use kind of electrodes, the same electrodes that we look for, the like electrodermal response on fingertips. He attached those to plants and to different life forms and he wrote a book on it, and I would really love to read. There's just not that many published, so it's pretty expensive to buy. But he has a theory that and he did all this scientific stuff with it that started with him polygraphing plants. But it was, he had this theory that our cells are all kind of connected, and even like ours. So us being friends, if we were to take some of your white cells and put them,
no need to bring race into
electrodes, just your white blood cells.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Got it.
And if you were to put them into petri dish and attach them to electrodes, that if I was to even get hurt, so maybe not even you, if I was to get hurt in the other room, that those cells might react, or even if your cells are in one room and you're in another room and you are hurt, then they would have. So he found these correlations. So he his one of his theories is just this interconnectivity through our cells and other humans. But it started with him pretty much using
plants.
The polygraph, same electrode stuff on plants.
Wow.
He did an egg too. I think he did. Yeah. So he used on a lot of different items and and then he kind of won bacteria and chickens and cats, and I don't know. There was all kinds of things. I don't think he put electrodes on cats. I take that back. But there was a cat eating chicken, and then he had bacteria. I don't know. So there's a whole bunch of stuff.
Oh, okay, got it. For some reason, I read
he had
that
bacteria on chicken or something, and then we should probably erase this part, but he had bacteria on chicken and then bacteria in a petri dish or something. Anyway, so it was something that was sort of connected, and then he had the cat eat the chicken, and so it was kind of to see how the cells would react.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. I feel like that would be. I'm not going to say a better movie than Deceiver, but that would be a great movie to see, just because if you go by just the underlying message of we're all made up of cells and connectivity and things, you could kind of have a really cool through line. And it would be interesting to see someone just hooking up electrodes to potatoes and things. And
and it sort of sounds like the start of a horror movie where it's if you maybe you're sick and you need to have someone's white blood cells, platelets or something, and then it was it was a murder. How many times has that been done though?
A lot. There's a movie called Body Parts where Jeff Fahey gets a murderer's arm.
Yeah. So maybe there's more to it.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that brings us to my last question.
Okay.
It's my favorite question.
Okay.
Erin.
Yes.
What are your dreams like?
Oh my gosh, I had a really, really bad nightmare this morning. But most of my dreams are pretty good. I remember them.
Yeah.
And they're epic. Where I'll wake up and I'll be like, what? I'll go to lots of different places and I'll see, and celebrities sometimes show up in my dreams.
Look at that.
Yeah, I know. And it's my husband, he'll wake up and he'll be like, I had a dream that I was being tortured to death. And I was like, wow, yeah, I had a dream I was hanging out with Matthew McConaughey and we were drinking Coca-Cola and and then I went skateboarding. I don't know. But,
and then we watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation. I was like, I didn't know you were in this.
And he's
like, and Renee
said,
too.
Be a lot cooler if I was, or something like that.
No, he wasn't.
So I would say...
So it's not work related. It's not you asking someone and then being like, here's all the terrible things that are happening in the world today.
Yeah, isn't that funny? You'd think I'd have more terrible
I was
dreams
wrong. Most people
that.
don't have these work related dreams, I thought.
Yeah. When I worked full time at the group home, I had pretty bad, and I had group home dreams. But they were more anxiety, where I'd left a kid
Sarah
at the
did too,
Safeway.
I think,
Or and I had this reoccurring dream when I used to work in the group home where I was at a party and that I took the kids with me and they were drunk and all of these anxiety things where I can't find them in the party, and then I'm thinking I'm going to have to tell their parents that I got that, so those happened a lot, or just really I'd have pretty bad nightmares there. But now I don't feel, I think I have more kind of anxiety dreams now than I do actual content of, which is good because I hear some wacky stuff that I don't really want a part of my dreams.
Right.
I'd really rather have Matthew McConaughey watching Chainsaw Massacre with me.
Me too.
Yes.
I think that's interesting. At my old job, where there was a lot of just biting and pinching and scratching and You know,
Yeah.
I'd keep like spitting journals and have days where someone spit on me like in my face over 600 times.
Right.
But I would have dreams where it was none of that. But it was that I got up and I brushed my teeth and I combed my hair and I was all ready. And then I'd wake up and be like, I gotta do it again. That's what my brain did. I don't know. It would just like start my day and do chores for me and be like, okay, you're ready to go to work. Psych.
Guess what? You didn't do any of those things.
Yeah, none of it. Enjoy brushing your teeth, loser. I'm like, brain.
Which is so interesting because I remember that time of your life where kids were biting you and we would see the bruises. I could imagine you'd have some wackadoo dreams, but you never did.
Never did.
Yeah.
It was mostly just stuff I didn't remember, stuff that wasn't work related. Well, I did work with a nonverbal population, and so every once in a while it would be that one of the kids was talking to me.
Oh, I bet those were good ones.
It was really good, but then it would make me sad when I woke up.
Yeah.
Because I was like, not because I wanted them to speak or to have a different ability, but because I liked what they were saying to me.
Yeah.
You know? And it was fun to like have them be like, no, this is what I was thinking the whole time.
Or these thoughts of like, if they could speak, this is what they would be saying. And it's great. Yeah.
Well, and I would record voice output devices for them. So a lot of times it would be my voice anyway. But it would. But to hear what their real voice was also really exciting because it wasn't my voice because they were so used to using mine, you know. I was like, I want granola bar. You know, I hear that in my sleep.
Oh.
But anyway, Erin, thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you for watching Deceiver from 1997.
Wow, twice. I watched this twice for you.
Thank you. That's like 4 hours of your life that you've donated to this film. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you for listening. Tune in next time where I'll talk to a different person with a different profession about a different movie. Links to our guest and topics of the conversation are up on the website vh-us.com. Please share our episode with anyone who you think would be interested. Rate, review, and what have you on your preferred platforms. If you would like to follow along visually, our Instagram is vh.us. If you're going to be in Portland, Oregon, or you live in Portland, Oregon, and you would like to be a guest, then please put guest and your profession in the heading of the email. If you'd like to recommend a movie, then please put movie and the title in the heading. Thank you for listening. I'd also like to thank my engineer, JL, and my producer, Wade Allen, and of course, my amazing wife, Sarah Marshall. Until next time, I'm Dirk Marshall, and this has been VH Us.